Tokyo Revengers is a series that has gained immense popularity recently with the release of the anime in the fall 2021 season. Twitter went crazy about it, the cringe TikTok e-girls came out of their baby daddy's basements, and hell, even Redditors were fond of it. As someone who had read the manga prior to the anime's release, this made me really happy to see a series I held in very high regard, getting the praise it deserved and some form of popularity. Keeping up with the show week in and week out was truly a great fun experience, and although I fell behind right at the end of things, I enjoyed watching season 1 of Tokyo Revengers. But on the other hand, reading the manga weekly was, well, it was shit. Tokyo Revengers went from being a promising new-gen prodigy to the same repetitive, boring stuff every week. It really amazes me that things went downhill so fast because I had really loved catching up to the series and had very high expectations for the ending. So much so that I believed it would land itself a spot in my all-time favorites. Well, so much for that. That ship has sinked and the dream has been crushed. But don't get me wrong here, I don't think Tokyo Revengers is some piece of crap waste of a manga, or as the youth call it these days, mid. I do still believe Tokyo Revengers is an incredible, enjoyable series with a phenomenal cast of characters, a very exciting and intriguing plot with some nice developments, a one-of-a-kind main character, and one of the best arcs I've read with Tenjiku. But for a series to decline so much in such a short amount of time, something clearly had to have gone terribly wrong for all of this to happen. And the goal of today's video is to find out what that something or somethings was. We're going to go really in depth here, so spoilers for the manga up until chapter 220. So without further ado, ladies, hopefully some ladies, and gentlemen, this is the downfall of Tokyo Revengers. Tokyo Revengers actually started out quite decently and not too slow for a shonen like most things nowadays. The main plot points and goals of our main character, Takemichi, were very clearly established early on, and what needed to be done to achieve his goal was very simple: stop Kisaki Teta and Manjiro Sano with his time-traveling ability. And while although that within itself is easier said than done, storytelling-wise it was clear and cut off what needed to happen and what Takemichi needed to do. And while there may have been quite a few bumps and challenges down the road, the end goal would be the same: stop Kisaki and stop Mikey to save Hina. Or well, at least that's what we thought would happen, because as many of you may know, the end goal of Takemichi, the story, and the author himself, I'm assuming, changed drastically towards chapter 200, and it wasn't as simple as just saving Mikey from his darkness. Now, to find these reasons is going to be quite the challenge, and I believe the only way to pick up on as many causes for the decline of the series is to look at every arc individually and sort of see how exactly the story progressed and what went wrong with that progression. Just a disclaimer that this is my personal opinion. You don't have to agree with anything I say here. Tokyo Revengers may not have fallen off for you, and that's perfectly fine, but I do still believe my claims and thought are worth at least one listen, so don't take anything personally. The Thomann Arc started out pretty well, like I mentioned earlier. The main goal was established right at the start and things progressed really well. We knew what Takemichi had to do to achieve his ideal outcome, a few more plot points were added such as Takemichi's relationship with Draken and Mikey, and things ended off really well with a nice twist at the end with Akun's death and some great build up for the next arc. Not too shabby for a modern shonen, and this great pacing continued into the next arc. Except things got even better than before. Mobius was hype. We got our first ever big gang fight introducing future major characters. Kisaki was established really well as the final antagonist. Takemichi and Hino's relationship took a big step forward with some great developments, if you know what I mean. And Takemichi didn't act like some bitchless loser for once. I was so excited reading it. Things were getting real good and there was great potential to be seen. And Tokyo Revengers seemed like a very promising series that could bloom into something great. And little did I know that the next arc would not only answer to all of my expectations, but in truth, blow them away completely. This was when Tokyo Revengers became great, when Thomann took on a gang by the name of Valhalla. Valhalla was the arc that uplifted Tokyo Revengers and really went to show just how much quality it had as a series. This arc did an absolutely amazing job at introducing new important characters like Chifuyu and Baji, as well as developing on older ones like Mikey and, who would have thought, Takemichi. I'm not going to go too in depth into Valhalla because one, this is probably the one arc in Tokyo Revengers which I believe to be quote unquote flawless in a sense, without any signs of a downward spiral, and two, the ending has huge spoilers and I don't want to spoil my viewers. Overall, Valhalla did its deed in cementing Tokyo Revengers as a series that you knew you had to keep up with, and the hype was there. The potential was to be seen, and it had the potential to either skyrocket or fall flat on its face. But even though I did just earlier call Valhalla somewhat flawless, it did present a problem in the series, and that was the formula of a huge full-on brawl gang fight. To be fair, it had only been used twice so far in Mobius and Valhalla respectfully, but if it were to be used in the next arc, it sure as hell wouldn't be effective, and what would you know, it seemed like the author saw right through that, and the next arc not only was better than Valhalla, but used a completely different structure. The Black Dragon arc was effective because it fleshed out certain lore of the series with the history of the Black Dragon Gang, and developed not only Takemichi, but Hakai, Mitsuba, Yuzuha, and Chifuyu into absolute incredible characters. There weren't any huge battles here, but actual strategized fights that made sense, well, somewhat. This arc really went to show that the series could deviate from its norm and become something completely different while still retaining what it is at heart with the quality of a top tier series. And the ending of this arc set up the next sequence of events, which many believe, including myself, to be the series at its outright best. So much so that it looked like it was going to be the ending to the series. Now before we get into Tenjiku, which is where all the current problems for the series arrived, let's do a quick recap. Tokyo Revengers is doing quite well. It had a really solid start and now has two great arcs, which serve to develop not only the characters but also move the plot forward in the best way possible. But Takemichi still can't seem to achieve his goal of saving Hina, Mikey, and his friends, which leaves out only one possible solution: get Kisaki far away from his loved ones. And guess what? He did that, and nothing changed. I'm not saying that the series should have ended when Mikey kicked Kisaki out of the gang, as I believe it was a great thematic choice in setting up Tenjiku, but that was probably the last we'd ever see the meta of Takemichi fixing something, going back to the present to see if it works, realizing something is still wrong, and then coming back to the past to fix it. That wasn't going to work anymore. Takemichi needed to succeed, or else everything would just seem repetitive with the same setup all the time. And that's where we enter Tenjiku, where Tokyo Revengers could have ended, and by all means where it should have ended. Now Tenjiku is an arc that by itself did everything right. Emotional moments, hype moments, plot twists, gripping action, and exciting plot developments that really got you appreciating the journey of how far the series had come from just a 26-year-old loser wanting to save his middle school sweetheart. And it's usually when this feeling occurs that it's about time the series comes to an end. By this point in time, a major flaw had already been introduced to the story, and one that by all means shouldn't have been. That was the possibility of a second leaper. I can't stress the fact enough that without this concept introduced, how better everything would have been. No, seriously, Takemichi should have been the only leaper. This just complicated things further and gave us more questions than answers, inevitably delaying the ending. A second leaper was useless as it made the series turn into more of a power fantasy. And hell, it would have been better if the leaper was just a salty Kisaki and things ended at Tenjiku. But no, it continued. Tenjiku did everything right, and nothing wrong, but in a sense it also killed the series. Yeah, I get that Kisaki had a lackluster, horrible conclusion, but that would have been fine. It wouldn't have tarnished all the good that came before if things ended then and there. Kisaki should have been the second leaper, and the series should have come to a close. Now, the question of why the series didn't end there had been pondering on my mind for a very long time, as Ken Wakui is not a bad author, but the only real answer I could come with was the timing of the release of the anime. Before the anime, Tokyo Revengers was never a popular manga and very underrated to say the least, with just average sales at best, but with the release of the anime, everything skyrocketed, and it even had more sales than fucking One Piece. and I'm sure the author knew he had to capitalize on the anime's release and the hype it would bring. So to do that, he absolutely couldn't end the series and had to drag it out more. If he had ended the series, sure, he might have made a bit of money, but by dragging and milking it out, he made more revenue off of anime onlys who wanted more content from the manga, and kept getting money from them with the release of new volumes. Now look, I'm not accusing him of anything here. Maybe it was his editor or a higher up in the manga company, but it still stands that things were dragged out with unnecessary plot points. And on the off chance that this was his plan from the get-go, I personally find it to be a horrible decision. In the arc of the Tenjiku, Takemichi had achieved his goal. Hino was safe and so was everyone else from the gang. He was going to get married and live happily ever after. Tokyo Revengers was going to have a good ending, but then all of this shit happened. Of course it would be fucking Mikey, man. Of course. Because of him being unable to save Mikey, Takemichi forsook everything he achieved and went back in time to chase after a man. After a man! Sound familiar? Yeah, definitely sounds familiar. Now, I'm not going to call Takemichi's decision horrible because it kinda makes sense for his character. He's compassionate and wants to save everyone, and he can't be content if he can't protect what's important to him when it's right in front of him. But let's talk about fucking Mikey. Okay, look, I know we had fucking family issues with all of them being put in a pack, and you could say it made sense for him to go down the wrong path, but fuck, man, he had friends. No, he has friends who are there for him, who will help him, comfort him, and bring him back from that darkness. Mikey's character wouldn't have been ruined if he had his final say at Tenjiku. His conclusion would have been fine if he just decided to not forgive Kisaki but live on righteously with his friends. But no! No! He had to become the second coming of Hitler and purge Tokyo. What the fuck, man? This series had so much potential, but because of anime revenue, it had to be dragged out. The next arc of the Tenjiku quite literally betrayed everything Tokyo Revengers was about. It was an underdog story about a hopeless 27-year-old saving the love of his life and those important to him. And then what did he do? Chase after a man and in turn endanger his loved ones. Look, Takemichi, I love you, bro. No homo, but I'd smash. I really do. But there was no reason to leave your girl on your wedding day to choose a man. I love your compassion, but God damn it. Tokyo Revengers was an amazing series, but it won't be remembered as that. It'll be remembered as a good promising manga gone bad with a lackluster ending. And I'm not even getting into Takemichi getting new powers and the shit new cast of characters. Seriously, they're horrible. Who the hell is named South? Who names a character South? Senju kinda bad though, I can't lie. Now, tell me down below in the comments if you believe that Tokyo Revengers has fallen off, and make sure to add why you do, because it's always fun to hear other people's thoughts on various media. I'm honestly not even sure if I want to continue and eventually finish the series. I stopped at chapter 220, and from glimpses of the newer chapters, it seemed to be really, really bad. I am sad that Tokyo Revengers fell off and was milked for anime revenue, but the good memories will always be there. Phew, that was one hell of a video. Tell me down below in the comments if you want more of these rants. I actually really enjoyed making this, although my neighbors are probably gonna fucking kill me or some shit. But thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, take care, and remember to leap into space. I'm out. Peace!